Hey guys, I'm Andrei, a certified translator, and this is a weekly give or take update about the local affairs. We'll start with the travel because some people are still under the impression that the countries that sanction Belarus have their citizens somehow maltreated, but this is not true. There's no ban to travel to Belarus in any country. There are no sanctions applied to citizens of these countries on arrival here. So travel here is in a way unlimited. There are no, let's say, barriers except for the limited number of flights. If you come over land, you have to get a visa, except for the western territories, which are Grodno and Brest visa-free area. You will check these online. And Lithuanians and Latvians have been granted visa-free mode until January 23. My congratulations, by the way. The only thing that exists since October last year is Americans have to get a visa coming by land or by air, which is no problem to arrange. Check my clips about Belarus visa support. It's not too complicated, but of course gets the necessary expenses into your travel budget. The Minsk National Airport visa-free mode is pretty much functional for 76 plus countries. You can fly visa-free and leave spending 30 days or less at a time. For different countries there are different, let's say, side comments, side issues to this law, but generally it doesn't work via Russia. If your ticket is through Russia, to Russia, from Russia, visa-free via Minsk Airport doesn't work. You'd have to get a visa in advance. But you can travel to both Russia and Belarus on Russian and Belarusian visa. They're not interreplaceable in spite of that frame law that got signed many years ago now, many months ago. It doesn't work. You have to get a visa. COVID is completely gone from the agenda, except if you are coming in, you'd have to have a vaccination certificate, no matter which vaccine, or a PCR test. The PCR test can be lifted, can be replaced with a business invitation. That's about it. A couple of local limitations. Poland doesn't seem to be kindly letting in Canadians or Americans, be that on residency here or on a visa here, and that's a bit of a funny problem because people and the whole shuttle buses get turned back at the border, and they're sad they don't have a reason to be in Poland. I mean Canadians, Americans, not Belarusian passport holders, which is kind of odd. And secondly, there's this law about 60 euro limit introduced by Lithuania. 60 euro limit to be brought in Belarusian cash doesn't seem to be working. At least the recent arrivals, my Germans, my Americans, Germans who drove their cars in, Germans who came by bus, they weren't, the Belgians, they weren't hampered in any way. They had much more and they weren't really searched or anything by Lithuanian border control, so that's a bit of a bullshit law. A little bit of politics. It seems that our big brother, big neighbor, is stuck in their southern campaign, so the campaign isn't moving anywhere. According to either party, they have almost won the campaign, so it's hard to judge what's going on there. But it's obvious that the sanctions that are hitting people, mostly simple taxpayers that are walking around here, are not very productive. And on top of not being so, the European Union is kind of letting some loopholes to transport grains from Ukraine or to transport potash or something like this. So the sanctions aren't really there on a large scale as well. There are a lot of exclusions and omissions there. The general belief here, although the general belief varies from a man to a man and from an expert to an expert, and as you know, these days everybody is an expert, except me, I don't know much about economy. Dollar keeps dropping. It's now 2.5 against ruble. 2.5 rubles against $1, and I guess it's going to be so until 1st of June, when most of the entities and natural persons in Belarus are supposed to pay income tax, including my charming self. So I guess I'd either have to pay a fine and pay later, hoping the exchange rate will increase, or maybe pay in time and just take it off my agenda. Throughout the last couple of months, export into the European countries, mostly Germany, Poland and Lithuania, increased, while the import from these countries and other EU countries generally dropped by some 30%. When the truck ban was introduced a couple of months ago, the suppliers were shocked, of course, and logistics people started increasing markups dramatically. So somebody told me that lorry from Vilnius that cost 500 euro previously was about 4,000 euro, and obviously the warehouse supplies are bound to have some interruptions, and this is bound to affect the shops, the retailers, the dealers, whoever. Like big guys are now shrinking their operations, like potash exports, Belarus Kali in Solidarsk, or the investor, the Swiss guy Stadler, the train makers in Fanipol, 30 kilometers away from Minsk, are partially wrapping up show, kicking out their folks or relocating them, whatever. I've told you already about the BASF leaving Belarus entirely, and a few other guys as well. So that's happening, and that's bound to have some kind of ugly aftermath, maybe in June or July. The big experts that I've been following on YouTube lately, they claim that once the oil supplies run dry in Russia, that's about to happen in July or August, the rate trend is bound to change, because all sorts of provincial and all sorts of high-tech supplies like servers and network equipment and you know, all sorts of things that Siemens was producing and they just pulled out of Russia as well. They're going to be scarce, they're going to be replaced with cheaper analogs, and that may not work out very well. As many of you may know, the sanctions include some brands saving their reputation and pulling out of Russia and Belarus, or sometimes just Russia, like McDonald's. But it also seems that many of these capitals have some kind of you know, declaration placed, but not really the capital removal, or the assets are being switched to the ownership operation by some local business entities, kind of sold for a symbolic price or just handed over for management until things quiet down, and they're actually not really gone, not forever. Yisk, however, and some other big operators here in Belarus, McDonald's is still around, are pretty much shut down and gone. Out of mail couriers, out of operators, only M&M, and that's the partner of FedEx, is operating. We just sent some papers to Turkey. They quote from 1 week to 4 weeks to deliver. As we're shopping around for not so cheap houses, as I put it in my previous video, we realized that a lot of people are selling to leave the country. We checked some half a dozen, $250,000 houses with my client, and it seems like half of them at least declare openly that they wrap up and move to Poland or elsewhere. Mostly it's Poland, because their business here isn't as stable as previously, allowing them to build a property like this, which would have cost some 300,000 plus before the war, which is of course a bit of a negative trend, but that's good for the buyers. The business people moving out are mostly IT folks who are globally tied up to their clients, who may frown upon their country of origin being Belarus and Russia, that have some ugly publicity lately. Not even bad publicity, but bloody ugly publicity. So that's not helping them to survive and to prosper in their own land. On top of other bright happenings, we're expecting a slight increase in utility tariffs. Electricity is now about 0.2 rubles a kilowatt, which is about to go higher for people who opted for electricity heating of their houses. The government introduced a special tariff for that. Generally, the population will not be paying more for now. But this specific tariff for people who only use electricity to heat their houses, where there's no gas supply or something like this, is going a little bit higher. And the gas price, about 0.2 rubles a cubic meter, is also expected to go up from the 1st of June. So guys, for today we might try and be optimists to say that there's no major hurdle for now in the economy, and it might or might not get rerouted to get its supplies and get its exports to the east and southeast rather than the west. The west was never any major buyer of our stuff, but now the hardships are going to mount up for those who imported from the west. They were a major supplier of most of the stuff, and I'm not sure what the phone sellers, car dealers and such like are going to do in the current climate. They are obviously shrinking and kicking out personnel or get their part-time jobs instead of the full-time employment. The other day in a minor, not so minor, some less than 100,000 people town northwest of Minsk, there was a kind of a strike. Not really a strike thing, but a lot of people from the dairy factory gathered at the lobby of the factory saying, guys, something is wrong here with the salaries. The blogger who covered that little thing on his Instagram got his 2 weeks in jail, duly, promptly, so I won't be giving you a detailed comment on that. There wasn't really a full-scale strike, but the management of the factory explained that by a computer glitch. Their salaries were much smaller than expected, much lower than expected because of a software issue. Everything got settled. Apart from this, there aren't any obvious stirrings among the working class. There aren't any shutdowns of the factory. The Ministry of Economy claims everything is fine and working 100%. So let's just hope that this trend will continue and there won't be any larger and worse disturbances through the next month or two. As always, I thank you all very much for watching these releases. Thank you very much for your comments and feedback underneath. $5, $10, $25 if you have money to spare to keep the channel going. Thank you, and I hope to see you later in Minsk. If you need to buy a property or a guided tour or something like this, you know where to find me. Travel wisely, shop responsibly, and hope to see you in Minsk sooner or later. Cheers!